Donald Trump has scrapped plans to visit Britain next month. The U.S. president was expected to make his first trip to the U.K. since entering office, but government officials have been told he has gone cold on the idea. No new date has been offered, raising the prospect of a major diplomatic snub. One senior source suggested Mr. Trump, who was expected to officially open the new U.S. Embassy in London, cancelled because he was unhappy about the arrangements and the scale of the visit. But Mr. Trump tweeted overnight that he thought the U.S. Embassy's move from Grosvenor Square in London's prestigious Mayfair district to Nine Elms, south of the Thames, was a bad deal. He said, "Reason I cancelled my trip to London is that I am not a big fan of the Obama administration having sold perhaps the best located and finest embassy in London for peanuts, only to build a new one in an off location for $1.2 billion. Bad deal. Wanted me to cut ribbon, no." Despite Mr. Trump publicly blaming predecessor Barack Obama, the U.S. announced plans to move to the new site in October 2008, when his fellow Republican George W. Bush was in the White House. The reversal comes despite Mr. Trump telling Theresa May last month that he would come to Britain in the new year. Preparations were advanced for a working visit to officially open the embassy, but the Mail understands this role will now be performed by Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Mr. Trump was also scheduled to hold talks with Mrs. May in number 10, with February 26 and 27 marked in the diary. Downing Street had hoped to confirm the dates this week. The president was not due to meet the Queen until a full state visit at a later date, and a second source said the lack of bells and whistles and royal involvement next month's visit may have discouraged him. Former UKIP leader Nigel Farage, an ally of the U.S. president, suggested that concerns about protests may have been the real reason for the visit's cancellation. "It's disappointing. He has been to countries all over the world, and yet he has not been to the one with whom he is closest," Mr. Farage said. Speaking on BBC Radio 4's Today program, he accused London Mayor Sadiq Khan and Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn of supporting protests. "Maybe, just maybe, Sadiq Khan, Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party planning mass protests, maybe those optics he didn't like the look of." Labour MP Chuka Umunna said it was very welcome he is not coming anymore, adding, "He runs counter to British values." Tom Toogended, chairman of the Commons Foreign Affairs Committee, suggested that Mr. Trump was more aware of opposition in the UK than in other countries he had visited, because it was expressed in English. "I think it's a great shame. The United States is very much one of our closest allies, but the alliance isn't based on who lives in the White House and who lives in number 10. It's based on shared values, common interests and absolute commitment to the international rules-based system which we have both spent the best part of 70 years upholding through NATO, through the United Nations, and through various other treaty organizations around the world," he told Today. "While I think it's a shame, I think, if I'm honest, it more reflects the fact that other people criticize in French, Italian, Korean and other languages and we criticize in English, and it's much easier for him to read English." In reply to Mr. Trump's tweet today, former Labour leader Ed Miliband posted, "Nope, it's because nobody wanted you to come. And you got the message." Liberal Democrat Foreign Affairs spokesperson Joe Swinson said, "The news that Trump has thrown his toys out of the pram and cancelled his trip to the UK will be welcomed by all of us who reject his abhorrent views. But it's a disappointing sign of how weak May's leadership is that she wasn't brave enough to call the visit off herself. The Prime Minister should be ashamed that she was so keen to roll out the red carpet to a man who spreads hate and division at every turn and goes out of his way to undermine British values." Labour MP Stephen Doughty said on Twitter, "Reason Donald Trump cancelled trip to London is that we are not a big fan of his racist, sexist, unthinking behavior. Big protests if he came to cut ribbon. He wanted the red carpet treatment and cheering crowds, no." Mr. Trump has previously expressed concern about the likelihood of mass protests. Last year he told Mrs. May he did not want to go ahead with a visit until the British public supported it.